Hey everybody, welcome to Minding the Key Store. I'm your shopkeeper, Brian Romo with PKI Solutions, and I wanted to pop on for a quick go live on a Thursday. I know we don't typically do that. We did our vault session on Tuesday because there's some very exciting things that are happening behind the scenes at PKI Solutions, and we were working on some focused project work that was consuming a lot of cycles on many of us throughout the organization. So I'd love to hear from you. How are you doing today? Happy almost Halloween. I'd love to hear what you're planning on for the holiday weekend, or do you even celebrate Halloween? Is that not a big deal in your neck of the woods? For some people, Halloween is like it's something kids do, and they wander around from one place to the next and get their candy. For other people, it's a pseudo spiritual experience for them, where everything rests on what's gonna centers around that Halloween weekend. We have been watching quite a few spooky movies as a family, and kind of catching up. There's some members of the family that haven't seen everything. Who's seen everything, right? We've seen many of the popular, when you're talking like Ghostbusters, or when you think about a very American stereotypical spooky movie, that would be, we've been going through those throughout the months. We've got a couple more we're going to knock out over the weekend, we think, and then we'll get into trick-or-treating over the weekend. So I'd love to hear in the comments below. I've got the panel open over here. This isn't going to be a super long session, but I wanted to finish out our spooky series and talk about horror stories, or things that, cautionary tales, things that maybe you should not do when configuring Active Directory certificate services, or wielding certificates in an ADN environment. And one of the I'm going to pull the music down just a hair here because it's distracting me just a little bit. So one of the things that we see very often as an organization is there's some confusion around so that the product is Active Directory certificate services, right? And there's a couple of different categories of certificate authorities, and depending on what you choose to build in your Active Directory environment, the templates that are associated with your certificate authority are integrated or made available or published throughout Active Directory for CAs to target and to make available to publish to issue. If you've got a standalone CA, there's a whole separate conversation around that. But, just out of the box, if you build an enterprise CA and you just hit next, those templates are going to be updated and put out in Active Directory. Some people, when they create a new template, they also, when they're configuring a certificate to be put out in Active Directory, they'll check a box that will say, publish certificate to Active Directory. And that's not the same as making it available for an enterprise certificate authority. And I'm gonna share here for just a minute. Let me cut to this. Let me scroll up just a hair. So if you're looking at the properties of a template, you'll get this checkbox that'll say publish certificate to Active Directory. And many people, when they're new to Active Directory certificate services, they say, well, I've got an enterprise CA. Of course, I want to put this in Active Directory. Of course, I want to turn it loose. And that could be bad juju. That could be a problem. And here's why. So what you're doing in checking this box, when this particular, in this case, when this user requests a certificate, the certificate is issued and it is published. That particular user certificate is not only made available in the Certs store on the local machine, but it's also published to Active Directory. And that could become a problem for your Active Directory team if you have something that's published to lots of people. So let me cut back here to me. So let's say you've got and I'm jumping over to my console just to see if we got any comments that are going. So let's say that you've got a template that you put out there and you publish to all users, all domain users, or all computers, and you hit it, you set it up to auto enroll. And then you say, you check that box and say, put this in Active Directory. Now you could be publishing tens or thousands or hundreds of thousands of certificates, not just to those users, but attaching those to their objects in Active Directory. And that could become a substantial issue when it comes to performance of Active Directory, replication, migration, if you're going to migrate to a different AD environment, all of those different objects that are associated with my user object or my computer object. fact, it bloats Active Directory as a database quite a bit more. So that's not to say that you shouldn't check that box and do that ever. Just be fully aware of why you might be checking that, and don't just check that box because you say, well, I have an enterprise certificate authority, obviously I want to publish to AD, because you could create some performance issues, and maybe in your environment you're just responsible for ADCS or PKI, or maybe you're responsible for AD as well. But it's a bad day when you start having, you know, replication issues or migration issues because the database that is AD is so bloated that you can't, use Quest tools for migration, or you're trying to Quest Migration Manager or something like that to move objects, or you're standing up a new site and there's a slow connection, and maybe your AD topology isn't great. And now you've got replication or congestion issues where things are bogged way down because there's so much overhead on every object that's in Active Directory. So some of the use cases, or one use case that you might want to consider and research, right? So look at the applications that you're using and get into the specifics of not only I need, the vendor needs, an SSL certificate, or code signing certificate, or whatever the category of certificate is, but start checking into the nitty gritty of, do they specifically say that it needs to be published to Active Directory? And some vendors don't know, and it needs to be vetted further, but most of the time, if the documentation doesn't say to specifically publish to Active Directory, you don't need to do it. You don't need to worry about it. Now, a use case where you might need to think about doing something like that would be if you have an encryption product. So like Microsoft's EFS as an example. You want, and that encryption is associated with a given user. We want those keys for that certificate to be associated with my user object, so that when I log out of a given Active Directory resource and into another one, I can continue to access those files that were encrypted, associated with my user context. So things like that. There might be a reason. Some identity-based solutions they require. If you're doing some things associated with maybe YubiKey devices or something like that, you might need to publish those particular certificates to Active Directory, because it's associated with single sign-on or multi-factor authentication, and that additional infrastructure needs to have those keys for that product, those certificate keys for that product associated with your AD object, no matter where you go. But be very, very tactical, be very, very careful, and if it doesn't say in the documentation to specifically check that box, then I wouldn't do it. You can certainly play around with it in a test environment and, see how it treats you. If you've got some scripts where you could publish tens of thousands of certs, maybe do that and take a look and see what AD does. See how the domain controllers behave as you publish those certificates, that are being published to AD over and over and over and over again. So how are we doing for comments? We got a couple of people that have checked in, but nobody that's commented in the live stream. I hope that you enjoyed this as a theme. I certainly hope to grow it in years to come. We had some guests that we were talking to and we're trying to get involved, and this time of year, at least for this year, there was so much workload for everybody to be able to carve out time to come onto the show and talk about their experiences. It just became very problematic to find something that aligns when people typically seem to be watching content here on the channel, and when other folks that we know and love and have a lot of experience in the PKI space would be available to join us on the call. So I hope to grow this. Please let me know in the comments what you thought of this as a theme. I thought it'd be kind of fun to do, monster stories about PKI. Like, don't do it or it'll blow up, and that's a bad day. That's a horrible day. Don't make that happen. Please let me know. Also, we have some exciting news that's coming up. If I haven't mentioned it on the channel already, PKI Solutions has a training subscription that's available, and we are adding additional value to it to include a community that for annual subscription members, they can participate in the community, which is called the PKI Tribe. They are live coaching calls to walk you through places where you're stuck as you're going through the training content, or possibly even if you're having, you're trying to implement things that you learned in the training course in your production environment, right? So you're extrapolating a concept and saying, well, this is what was covered in the course. How does that make sense in my particular environment? We had one of our first calls last week, and it was amazing. We had a good turnout for our inaugural session, and many people were excited about it. So if you want more of an interactive experience with PKI Solutions, definitely go to pkisolutions.com and look up subscriptions, and you can reach out to the folks on our web team who can respond to you about questions with the environment. And I have to cough. Pardon me. And the other thing is, I'm not at liberty to share any information at this point, but we have some very exciting announcements coming in Q4 of this year / Q1 of next year. There's some really interesting and amazing things that PKI Solutions is working on as an organization that I think would be very valuable, and many of you would be excited to know about and get more information about as well. So stay tuned, and if you enjoyed this, if you like this particular topic, what are your experiences? Have you published a bunch of stuff to AD and a bunch of stuff has blown up? Let me know in the comments. What are you doing for Halloween? Let me know in the comments. Either one of those works. And if you enjoyed those and you have not done the YouTube things, please do the YouTube things. Like, share, subscribe, hit the bell notification that will let you know the next time I do go live. Next week, we're going to go back to our regular schedule of new content coming out on Tuesdays, Vault content coming out on Thursdays. We're going to continue to stretch our legs going live and just make sure all of our settings are working properly. And we're definitely going to lean into having some more guests on the channel, so you're not just listening to me, right? Because there's more to PKI than just what Brian knows and can bring to the table. So we have some more folks that we would love to join us, and we're working on scheduling those people. So do the YouTube things. I hope you have an amazing Halloween. If you celebrate, spend some time with your family. Don't have too much sugar. Be safe, and we will talk to you next week.